How are you, Paula? Nice to see you again.
I'm good. Nice to see you. I want to welcome everybody who's streaming in here. If you're here for the first time or if you're coming back, welcome back to another live Q&A session with our resident preventive neurologist, Dr. Richard Isaacson. I work with him at Retain, and we've gotten so many questions in advance of the webinar starting when people registered. So once again, we'll try to get through as many of them as we can. And apologies in advance because we won't be able to get to them all. But you can always watch recordings of past Q&As on your Learn page. There's a little tab that says Q&A, and just click that, and you can see past ones. And then this one usually goes up within a day or two afterwards if you want to, replay something he said, or tell a friend, or just see what's been said in the past. So.
Great. Well, it's great to be back. And for those of you who joined us last month, thanks for your patience. I was in the lab and got an impromptu lab tour. If anyone wants to see what I do every day when I'm not working from home, I'm actually getting my hands dirty, and we got blood everywhere, and we're in a very strict environment and very careful with everything. But we have test tubes and blood and processing and machines. So check out January 2026's live Q&A. We had a lot of technical difficulties, but today the internet's okay. Can everyone hear me? Am I loud enough? I had technical glitches all morning. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. And just before we get started, I'm just going to put a little link in the chat. If y'all can just take 2 minutes at the end of the Q&A. Just we literally read every one of these comments. So if you would like to help us improve Retain Your Brain, our software that we've launched free to the public, funded by the NIH, the National Institute of Health funded us to do a large randomized controlled trial, and we're going to be publishing these data soon. We presented it first, and now we'll be publishing the full manuscript. We showed that people that use the Retain Your Brain software, we lowered Alzheimer's risk by 6% in 6 months. That's amazing. It's free. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being a part of our family. But if you do have suggestions on how to improve these Q&As or features or things that you're looking for on our Retain Your Brain software, take the short survey. Tell us what you think before we end. So with that, 305, 303, close enough. Paula, take it away.
Okay, well, we'll jump in. This week we have a lot of questions about cognitive training and what types and amounts of cognitive training or brain exercises could meaningfully lower dementia risk, and should we all be playing brain games today?
Yep. So I wonder why this question has come up, but I can figure it out. So there was a very large study called the ACTIVE trial. The ACTIVE trial was a study using a very specific type of brain training that was funded, I also believe, by the NIH, National Institutes of Health, 20-year follow-up data. And this study, I believe, was published last Monday, so about 10 days or so ago. It made the news. I think I saw something on NBC and this and that and everything. And the study looked at, does a specific type of brain training using a game on your phone, kind of like feels like games, but it's like a training mechanism, an intensive brain training activity that you do initially, and then you repeat that, I believe it was 1 year later and 3 years later. Could there have been a spillover effect, meaning an ever long lasting effect? And I remember about a decade ago, actually exactly a decade ago, that the 10-year data came out, and it showed that while there's different types of brain training games out there, and I keep saying games, but I should really just say brain training. Cognitive training is very different than playing games. Okay. Some of you may have heard me say this, but you can do all the Sudoku you want. You're just going to get better at Sudoku. There's not that spillover effect. Learning something new, a new language, a new adult education classes, learning how to play a musical instrument, that has something too. But can someone participate in cognitive training, either speed training, attention training, memory training, language training? And there's different platforms out there that can give you this type of training. Now, in Retain Your Brain software, we do have some, we call them cognitive activities. We're really careful with our words because we believe that staying engaged and doing cognitive activities, as long as you like them, probably has a brain benefit. Reading probably has a brain benefit. Going to museums has a brain benefit. But there are certain software programs that you can do, and you can go on every day, and you can maybe pay a little fee and do whatever else, and you can be training. So there is a study called ACTIVE. The company that did the study was Posit Science. Posit Science, I have nothing to disclose. I have no relationships with any companies related to brain training or pharmaceutical companies or vitamin or supplement, anything like that. And long story short is Posit Science did some very um, well done studies where people that had training in a specific area called the double decision test. The double decision test is something where there was like you had to look at one thing and then something else and another thing, and you had to do like this divided attention task. And people that participated in that for a short period of time and then had boosters 1 year and 3 years later actually had better brain benefits 2 decades later. And 1 decade later, which is the first big study that came out, people had less car accidents. Whoa. And that's really interesting because the type of cognitive training that was done was about kind of having this like divided attention where you're looking at something, but then you're looking in your periphery and you see something coming and then you have to attend and then you look back here and then you see something coming. And if you can get your brain to attend to different areas of stimuli, different stuff coming at you, that translates into less car accidents. That's amazing because that shows that if you do a certain type of brain training, you can have a better cognitive outcome, a better life outcome, better quality of life, less dementia risk. That's really great. So yes, do I believe in brain training? Yes. However, if you look at the brain training games that software did that are related to memory and other areas, those types of brain training activities unfortunately did not lead to that everlasting, long-lasting spillover effect. So the answer to this question is yes. Can brain training help? I would say yes. However, brain training isn't is not all created equal, and there's different types. And if you're going to join a website out there, if you're going to do something, look at the data. Go online, look at their evidence, go to their science people, and see if the things that you're doing actually going to lead to a spillover effect. Hope that's helpful.
This is the first live question that's come in on the Q&A. What do you think of the supplement Cocovia cocoa flavonoids? Is it legit?
This is very funny that this question is asked today, and there's been some really interesting timed questions in these live Q&As, and this is live, so I didn't know this was coming. But so I reordered my Cocovia, and I have again nothing to disclose. I am not paid for by anything that I wish Hershey's would sponsor me, even though Mars is actually the company that actually does Cocovia. I'm about to go to New York and I'm looking in my little travel pack. You can see I travel with cocoa powder. That's actually Hershey's. That's not the good stuff. I can't find my Cocovia. Is my Cocovia in here? Anyway, yes, I believe in Cocovia. I believe in it because I just reordered it. Okay, every couple of months I reorder it. I ordered the tub and I swore I ordered one and then a second one showed up and I was very confused. So it's interesting that this question comes up because I said, I have the second tub. I swore I ordered one. And my better half said, well, I saw it in the cart in Amazon, so I just ordered it for you. And what I ended up doing is I ordered it on the Cocovia website and not in Amazon because I got a discount coupon. Heart Health 2026, I think, was the discount code. But anyway, that's a really ridiculous story, but it basically tells you that I do believe in Cocovia. Why? Cocoa flavanols have an antioxidant effect. Antioxidants probably slow brain aging a little bit. Not a miracle drug, but helps, and also is good for heart health. So if you look at the Cocovia website, and again, I'm not trying to sell anything. I have nothing, no commercial affiliations to any of this. I do take it myself. Believe it or not, I've been taking Cocovia for over 20 years. It's crazy. 2021, sorry, 2001, 2002 was the first time I had Cocovia. They used to make these little chocolate bars. And Cocovia is actually made by a company called Mars. You may have heard of Mars, different than Hershey's, but Mars actually came up with a scientific process of being able to evaluate the strength or the power of cocoa flavanols, antioxidants in chocolate. And they use this body of research over decades. They invested a lot of money into this to study whether cocoa flavonoids in a pill form initially is how they did it, could help with heart health. And what it did was it lowered blood pressure a little bit, which is cool. It helped with insulin resistance. And then in some of the studies, it actually showed that memory function was a little bit better. And that was cool. Then another study was done through Columbia, and it showed that there were better outcomes or function or the part of the brain related to memory lit up more on brain scans. So basically, everything kind of was starting to make sense. Memory was better, the heart health was better, everyone's happy. The challenge with Cocovia is they did a different study, which was a large study, where they also included like a vitamin and they did like a cross comparison. And the follow-up study that was done, where we were thinking like we're going to get some great evidence here, and unfortunately, that study didn't pan out. That study did not show the type of benefit that we were expecting. So, do I like Cocovia? Yes. Why do I like it? I think it may help me a little bit over time. I put it in my coffee literally every morning. Been taking it for unbelievably 25 years. Probably most people didn't even know it was out there back then. Um, is it a grand slam home run, brain health, Alzheimer's prevention? Well, no, it's not a grand slam home run. But if I'm doing everything right and I'm exercising and I'm eating a healthy diet, I'm getting my rest and I'm doing stress modification, I'm making sure my blood pressure, my cholesterol, my blood sugar, all of that is in check. I think adding Cocovia to an otherwise very healthy, whatever lifestyle is a good thing to do, and I think it really does have a little bit of additive benefit. If someone's not exercising, if someone's eating unhealthfully, if someone's eating a whole pint of ice cream and taking Cocovia, eh, like that little bit of Cocovia probably ain't going to do it for you. But I have said this, and I wonder if you've came up with this, Paula, or maybe it was me and you copied it or someone. We've used this interchangeably, but a mocha for your memory in the morning. I have a dark chocolate in my coffee every morning, a little bit of milk, try to just be a little bit of sugar because the dark cocoa powder is bitter. But yes, good for the brain and the heart as well.
Right. Are blood biomarker tests more important than genetic tests, or are they best done in tandem? And if so, in what order?
Here we go again. This is an exceptionally timely question because yesterday, our hard working team, for the first time, completed validation on, to my knowledge, so don't quote me, but I think this is correct, will be the first available clinically grade blood test in our country, in the United States, that allows us to measure the function of the ApoE4 gene and the ApoE gene in general. So let me take a step back because I think there's a lot to unpack here, and I would say most people have never heard about this before, so I'm going to try to take a step back. Everyone out there has an ApoE gene. You get an ApoE2, an ApoE3, or an ApoE4 from mom or dad. And therefore, you have two copies, otherwise known as variants. So an ApoE2, 3, lower risk for Alzheimer's. ApoE3, 3, one from mom, one from dad, neutral risk for Alzheimer's. ApoE3, 4, a little bit higher risk. ApoE4, 4, one 4 from mom, one 4 from dad. ApoE4, 4 is higher genetic risk. Doesn't mean you're going to get Alzheimer's, but the person is at higher risk. When you have an ApoE4, one copy or two, people have to do certain things, omega-3 fatty acids, exercise on a regular basis, avoid alcohol and tobacco. There are things that drive Alzheimer's risk specifically in an ApoE4 carrier, and there are things that we can do about it, but it does increase risk. ApoE genetic risk is a static marker. And you'll read in the studies, having one or more copies of APO increases your risk by 3 times or 4 times, or two copies is 8 to 12 times risk. That grinds my gears. That is very imprecise. And truly, how a person estimates Alzheimer's risk is through polygenetic risk, meaning not just ApoE, but the other genes that we mostly don't test for, and epigenetics. Epigenetic means the person's choices in their life, exposures and environment, how much exercise, what we take in. Epigenetics means the environmental impact on a gene. It's kind of like when you smoke and you have a gene that increases lung cancer risk. The bad gene plus bad smoking equals lung cancer comes. People who smoke till they're 90, right? George Burns, I think he was 95, still kept smoking, right? Nothing. Well, he didn't have the gene. But if you have a gene and you do the bad thing, then you get the bad problem. And ApoE, in my opinion, is one of those genes where if you do everything right, you can neutralize most of that risk. So let's use a car analogy. The ApoE gene is kind of like the engine of the car. The engine of the car, you kind of can't take an engine out in a car, especially if we're using it in an analogy that the engine of a car is like DNA. You can't choose your parents, you can't change your DNA. ApoE is what you got. You got a 4 or 3, whatever it is, that's what you got. But in every car that we drive, we have a dashboard. Up, engine lights on. Up, need a change of the spark plug. Problem with the oil. Wait, the gas gauge is low. We need to fill the gas tank. Our group has been working very, very, very hard over the last many years to come up with the first lab developed test called an LDT, where today, Paula, actually, we were in the lab last month and Paula was there a couple weeks prior, where now we can draw blood on someone and we can process it in our lab. And this isn't available to the public just yet. We just finished the validation literally yesterday, submitted to the lab director for sign off and review of all the technical details. And next month, we may be able to release this, to the public. And we can now measure the function of the ApoE gene. So what the heck does this mean? This basically means that even though a person can have two copies of ApoE4, they can have different levels of protein expression, and some people with E4 may be at generally higher, lower, or kind of in the middle, moderate risk. And to me, I've seen, I may have seen more people with these ApoE4 genes than any other physician on the planet because this is kind of my specialty. This is what I do. 23andMe, if people are out there, have done their testing. You can find out if you have one or two copies. My video's on there. I pop up, I tell people, and millions of people have seen that. So I've been focusing on this for a long time. And if someone out there in the future finds out they have an ApoE gene, but wants to understand, are they at higher, lower, or medium risk, somewhere in there, and maybe more of a active and non-static defined genetic thing where the protein is high, the ratio is low. Lower the ratio, the lower the risk. So the engine light of the car analogy is the blood test that we literally just developed, literally hot off the press as of yesterday. And what I've seen is when someone starts to make brain healthy choices, they're eating right, they're sleeping more, they're doing the right things, they're putting quality fuel in, right? They're getting maintenance, right? They're getting their sleep, they're changing the oil, they're eating brain healthy nutrition. I've actually seen, believe it or not, people, actually, a guy I had dinner with yesterday, really nice guy, came to visit. His ApoE44 gene is static. That's not going to change. But when he first came in to see us in South Florida in 2022 when he got this drawn, his ApoE4 risk was in the 65th or 70th percentile. His ratio was around 1.65, something like that. It's a number that is irrelevant, but it's a number we use. His ratio now has dropped to 1.5, which is the 25th percentile. So by doing the right things over the last 4 years, his gene, his ApoE4 gene, is expressing less protein, ApoE4 protein. ApoE4 protein is the bad stuff, the pathologic protein that accelerates amyloid accumulation. Amyloid is a pathologic biomarker related to Alzheimer's. You have amyloid and then tau and then inflammation and then neurodegeneration, brain cell death. So if we can win the tug of war against our genes, we can make our genes work better for us, and we can use this new test, which I can't wait to talk more about soon once everything, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. I believe that this test may eventually be used as a more real-time, real-world indicator of how a person is doing in terms of their ApoE induced risk. Um, that was complicated. I've never exactly explained it like that before. Paula, did that kind of make sense? Did you have any questions
Yeah,
about
no, that's
how I
very interesting. And so the idea is that you can track that protein expression over time. You're going to take the ApoE test is always going to say you're a 3 or a 4 because that's fixed. But you're saying the expression of it is what you're sort of measuring or tracking over time.
Yes, you got it. And while I want to be very conservative, because I take an oath, it's called promising not to overpromise. Okay. In the Alzheimer's prevention space and preventive brain health, 45, maybe 50% of dementia cases may be preventable if that person does everything right. But we don't have all the answers yet. And I want to be really clear on that. This is preliminary stuff and this is brand new stuff and this is in a cohort of a few hundred people. Once this test gets deployed and once we learn more and publish more, we're going to learn more. But yeah, I believe, first of all, what this test can definitely do, so without a shred of the doubt, which I can definitively say today, is if a ratio is X, then that, without even doing a genetic test, I can determine with 100% certainty, it's pretty good, whether or not a person has two copies of ApoE4 or one copy of ApoE4. So that's cool. That's a big headline. That's news. That's never been really talked about too much, I don't think. That a non-genetic test, a protein expression test, can determine if a person has one, two, or zero copies of the APOE4 genetic variant. That's cool. That's a cool test. It's less worrisome than genetics. Some people don't want to do genetic tests, but to me, the real-time monitoring potential of this test, I'll say potential at this time, let's further validate and further prove. That's what really excites me, and I couldn't be more proud to create my first blood test that doesn't exist anywhere else. So pretty cool.
Very, very cool. We have some other related questions about other tests that are out there in the world now. Should someone be concerned about any level of p-tau in the brain, even though it's in normal range?
Great question. I got this question yesterday from the person I was having dinner with, who's an ApoE44 and had a lot of questions. So everyone in every human has some degree of amyloid detectable in their blood, tau protein detectable in their blood, um, NFL, neurofilament light, a marker of neurodegeneration. Everyone has some of that in their blood. GFAP, glial fibrillary acidic protein, a marker of neuroinflammation. Everyone has some degree of that detectable in the blood. Now, let me caveat that a little bit with depending on what blood test you use and how quality it is and how strong and powerful it is, like the tools that we use, it's science fiction style. The stuff that we do in our lab, and Paul, you've seen it. I'm blown away, like almost like literally every week that I go into that lab, we're doing something different. We can detect. I'm going to detect. Like you may have, there may be blood tests out there that don't detect it, or you get a zero. It's not a zero. It's just you're using the wrong test. So since I'm a clinical researcher and we really try to get the best tools, my answer to your question is everybody out there, when the correct test, high quality test is used, should have some degree of a detectable level of all of these proteins. And your question specifically was about tau protein. So pause. Tau protein, there's multiple different types. There's p-tau 181. That comes up first, then comes up p-tau 217. P-tau 181, p-tau 217. Those are going to be the two things that you hear the most about. Been a lot of press about p-tau 217. It's the new end all and be all. Oh, it's going to change everything. Yeah, not so fast. It's just one test. It's imperfect. And to me, just like when you go to the doctor, does your doctor order a total cholesterol and that's it and says, see you later, above 200, treat, below 200, you're fine? No, you need a panel of tests. So I believe very strongly that when someone is trying to determine their risk or to track blood tests over time, ordering one single test is like we're missing the forest from the trees. So everyone has a detectable level of p-tau 217 or p-tau 181. More caveats, there's something else called p-tau 231, which is intriguing and we follow, not available commercially, generally speaking. Multiple other tau proteins out there that we track, not available commercially yet. Figure that out soon. And then there's brain-derived tau. Most commercial tests, where if you go to a lab right now and you want one of these tests, I'm not saying necessarily to do that because we recommend people want to get these tests, do it in a very specific environment. Meaning, for example, we're partnering hopefully soon to kind of get better resources. We don't just want people getting random tests. We want good education out there, explainer videos on what this test means, to be able to talk to a healthcare provider, talk to a licensed clinician, that person that's licensed to practice medicine in your state. That's what I believe. I believe these tests should be paired with talking to a licensed healthcare professional. That's again my bias. I believe these tests should be done in a panel. But long story short, I think that we don't fully know what the levels mean. And just because you have detectable in the blood doesn't mean you're going to get Alzheimer's. If it's at higher than ideal level, a person may be at higher risk. But I believe, and this was talked about in a Wall Street Journal article, I think it published on February 9th. This was in our Retain Your Brain newsletter. And basically, we can track these proteins, but just having the proteins, amyloid or tau, if a person does not have clinical symptoms, then I don't believe that person qualifies for Alzheimer's disease. Controversial statement. I believe Alzheimer's disease is a clinico-pathological condition, and just having the proteins means you're at risk of cognitive decline later, but it doesn't fully mean you have Alzheimer's disease. Same like you have high cholesterol. Does it mean you have a heart attack? No. Does it mean you have heart disease? No. High cholesterol, you could have clean arteries, strong heart, never have a heart attack. That's what I believe. Paula, you and I talked a lot about that construct of Alzheimer's being a clinical pathological disease. Any comments there on your end about how what do you think of Alzheimer's and how you can put together the biomarkers?
Yeah, I think it's very educational and reassuring to see this in the context of risk, that you have these risk markers. What these various biomarkers and proteins in the brain are showing are basically risk markers, just like your cholesterol panel is showing your triglycerides. It's a risk marker of a possible future disease, as opposed to saying, I have this in my brain, which now you're just saying is to some extent normal in many, in all brains and some even low things. That doesn't mean that I have this terrible disease. That article, by the way, is in the print edition of the Wall Street Journal today.
Oh,
So if anybody has a subscription wants to take a look at it, but that you're quoted in that article out in today's paper.
okay, great. Love it. Did I get no picture this time, huh?
No, there was no picture of you with your medals, and weren't you in some,
Yeah, I made the Wall Street Journal for a non-Alzheimer's story last year, which I thought was pretty cool, but can look that up. But yep, that was
now
me.
that article actually was about something that someone has just asked us a question about, which is they've heard that there are studies showing that GLP-1 drugs can reduce Alzheimer's risk. And is that related to reducing inflammation? What are your thoughts on that?
Great. Well, actually, that was the topic, as Paula, you just alluded to, over about a year ago. I was interviewed for the Wall Street Journal because I started with my doctor's suggestion, even though I'm healthy, I had a little bit of a belly fat. I had a little bit of extra fat around the midsection. And as men and women get older, it gets harder to lose belly fat, right? It's stubborn. And I was doing everything right. I was exercising. I was eating a brain healthy diet, but my waist size was getting larger. And we know that as the belly size gets larger, the memory center in the brain gets smaller. So I was worried about my risk. And my doctor said, why don't you try a tiny little dose of a GLP-1 drug that you can inject? It's a micro dose. Here are some samples, and why don't you try it? So with that, I tried a little bit of microdosing with my doctor's permission. And now this was like years ago, and now this is like, kind of in the zeitgeist. But this was a Wall Street Journal article story that the reporter, I had talked to her about something else, and I said, yeah, I started on the tiniest little dose of a GLP-1. My belly fat went gone. I only lost like 5 or 6 pounds. That's all I needed. But my half marathon time zoomed up. I cut 10 minutes off of my half marathon time when I started on a microdose of a GLP-1. And she was really asking me about GLP-1s for the brain, just like this question, and in our research, and I think in some others, there's decades of research that shows that people that take GLP-1s, these are people that have taken the pills for decades, have a lower incidence of dementia. Now, there was a recent study that showed that in a randomized trial, people did go on an oral drug. That study failed, but the study had a lot of flaws and it wasn't set up the right way. And they only followed people for a few years. You need to follow people longer, and a lot of complications there. But in our research that we've presented at the American Academy of Neurology meeting, Society for Neuroscience, and the Alzheimer's Association National Conference, people that take GLP-1 drugs, mostly on the lower dose end, actually had lower tau levels in the brain and better looking biomarkers. So in our research cohort, we have better tau biomarkers. So yes, do I believe that GLP-1 drugs may have a protective effect on the brain? I would say yes. Do we have definitive data in a randomized controlled trial to prevent Alzheimer's over a decade? Well, no, and that's probably never going to happen. That's very expensive to do these trials. But in my case, I used this tiny little drug for 9 weeks, and my half marathon time zoomed, and I had the best half marathon time I've had in years. So that's why I was in the Wall Street Journal last year holding my little medal up. So I do believe that GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy are semaglutide, which is a GLP-1 on one receptor. And then there's another GLP drug called Zepbound or Mounjaro or tirzepatide. And tirzepatide has two receptors, which is the GIP and the glucagon and whatever else it's called. And then there's a new one that's probably going to come out within about a year from now, give or take. Could be anywhere from 10 to 11 months, but probably more realistically 12 to 14 to 16 or 18 months, called it's a retrutitide, which has three receptors. Some people call it a GLP-3, but that's not exactly accurate. GLP-3s, retrutitide, may end up being the best one because it's going to spare muscle loss. Some of the problems with the GLP-1s is, with me, I had to have a lot of protein and I had to do strength training twice a week. Otherwise, I was going to lose muscle. And actually, 28% of the weight I lost, which actually isn't too bad, was muscle loss. And I wanted to be really careful. A lot of people lose two-thirds muscle. One of my relatives, we fought about this. She loved the GLP-1s. She was doing it and she was losing weight and feeling great. She lost 75% muscle. And then she tried to get off the drug and it was like a mess because her metabolism dropped because metabolism stays up when you have more muscle. So I just want to be cautious that GLP-1s are great when used the right way. We need to do strength training on a regular basis, have adequate carbs and protein around that strength training. Talk to your doctor. Don't just look about weight. It's not about weight. BMI is bad. It includes weight and height. Nope. Waist circumference is good. Body fat measurement is good. Muscle mass percentage is good. You can buy one of those at-home scales for a couple $100. If you're going to use a GLP-1, not just watch your weight, watch how much body fat you're losing so you don't, and how much muscle fat you're either, or sorry, muscle strength you're maintaining or ideally gaining over time. But GLP-1s are great when used correctly.
Great. Do we have any data on ApoE4s who live in blue zones? For example, do they live longer than in the blue zones than in other regions? Do they get dementia later?
Ooh, uh-oh. I don't know if I know the answer to this question. Paula, you got me. We've been doing these Q&As for more than 6 months now, so probably 9 months. Could have had a baby in the time, and I officially don't know the answer to this question. I can phone a friend and call Dan Buettner. The guy's the man. He lives in Miami, and he interviewed me on a panel a couple months ago. Oh boy, I would have to say I am not aware of the blue zone data related to ApoE4s. I think one of the challenges I have in answering this question is I don't know what the ApoE rates are in Okinawa and in Italy, where the blue zone is in Loma Linda. My guess would be, I'm guessing, that there's a lower chance of people, lower penetrance or lower likelihood of people having one or more copies of the ApoE4 variant. I'm going to guess 15 to 20% instead of 20 to 25% otherwise. I actually do not know the impact of ApoE or the penetrance and the impact of it. But what I would say, if I'm going to speculate, is if someone has two copies of the ApoE4 variant and is following a blue zones type diet, I would say that's a really great idea. ApoE44s are specifically protected by the Mediterranean style diet. I would say that. I would say that ApoE44s are specifically harmed by alcohol. I would say ApoE44s are specifically harmed by not having exercise. So when you live life in the blue zones, having a plant-based diet, green leafy vegetables, omega-3 fatty acids are really critical. So I think what I would say is, um, yeah, I would say I think the blue zone diet is a good idea for ApoE4 carriers, but I don't know about if it's been studied in E4 positives versus E4 negatives in the blue zones, and I am going to have to phone a friend eventually.
Okay, well, we can follow up on that. I have not
Okay.
seen that research either. If you're not an ApoE4 carrier,
Mhm.
how much does that affect your risk and how aggressive should you be about blood testing and intervention?
I love that question. I'm glad you asked it. So 25% of the population has one or more copies of ApoE4. Why do we keep talking about ApoE4? Well, we keep talking about it because people that have the variant are more likely to get Alzheimer's. So 60% of the people that I see in my practice have one or more copies of E4. I know this in our Alzheimer's prevention clinic study. I think it was 11 or 12% had two fours, and 50-ish percent, 48% had one four. Nowadays, it's about the same. Now we're up to like 15% ApoE44s because people test for it so much now, and then 40 something, about 40%, 45% actually have one copy. But that still means 75% of the general public does not have any E4s, and 40% of the people with Alzheimer's have no E4s. So of course it's important because ApoE4 is just one potential genetic risk factor, and there can be other potential genes that can contribute to elevated Alzheimer's risk, but those genes we just generally don't test for. There's one gene called SORL1, SORL1. back in the Mirage study. This was a study I was involved with back in, gosh, around 2005 or so, about 20 plus years ago. In that study, they showed that certain populations had this higher rate of sorrel 1, and sorrel 1 increases risk of Alzheimer's. There's CLU, BIN1. The list goes on and on about all these other genes. Now, cumulatively across the general population, the impact, the negative impact of these genes is small. So 1% here, 2% there, 0.5% here, but that does add up. And especially if someone has a clue, a bin 1, a sorrel 1, a this or that, and has had head trauma, uh, bad cholesterol, doesn't exercise, has diabetes. So when you add polygenic risk plus poor lifestyle, absolutely you can have an increased risk. So the answer to your question is, uh, you know, uh, everyone with a brain is at risk of Alzheimer's. I hate saying that, but that's like true. I think if someone has a very heavy family history of Alzheimer's and all of their family members have been tested for the genes, and every one of the family members affected had an ApoE4, but that person themselves were spared. They missed the 4 from mom or dad. Sure, they're going to be at lower risk, and sure, we don't have to kind of maybe be as vigilant. I would still, you know, do something and live a healthy lifestyle and maybe do a baseline blood biomarker test or baseline cognitive test or baseline MRI or whatever it is, depending on a person's risk tolerance or interest. But yeah, I think one should be pleased that they don't have a 4, but I think we have to be really cautious. I don't think people should just dismiss their risk just by not having an ApoE4. Again, 4 out of every 10 people that I see don't have an ApoE4. And by the way, those cases are tough. ApoE4, I understand. Up, down, left, right. We created a blood test for ApoE4 4 people or in 3 4 people. Like, okay, fine. So one of the questions about an ApoE2 4. I don't know if I've mentioned this before on any of these, but my family actually is littered with 2 4s. That's the genetic thing that my family has. I believe a 4 4 married a 2 2 in my great grandparents, and the 8 siblings were all 4 2s. That's what I believe because 6 of them, I believe, have been tested, and they've all been 4 2s, or it's just random, and that's a very uncommon combination. 4 2s, by the way, are actually at lower risk because the 2 negates most of the 4, which is very interesting. And with our new protein expression ratio test, which again, someone in the chat said that it is available. I think if you look at the test that you may have mentioned, which may be available, ApoE, I think that's probably referring to genetic test, but maybe I'm wrong. But this is a ratio of ApoE4 protein divided by total ApoE protein, which is complicated. But in our family and in the family members with those genes in our clinical research trial and other people out there with a 4 and a 2, the protein expression is actually quite low, and actually not really worrisome to me. So anyway, hopefully that answers the question a little bit.
Should ApoE4 carriers have different reference ranges for their blood lab values compared to the general population?
Hmm. Um, I've been asked this question before. I usually say yes, but I'm not sure that I have the perfect objective data because we didn't rigorously look at this in our Alzheimer's prevention clinic study that we published in 2019. We looked at it, but we didn't have enough power, meaning strength of the data set, 174 people. We now have over 300 people in our current research study, and we do plan to look at this. So what I will say to answer this question is simply yes. My belief is we need to have different reference ranges. Second, I don't have objective information yet, but 3, we're working on it. Now I'll more directly answer your question. That being said, I'm speculating a little bit. Let's talk about LDL cholesterol. LDL cholesterol is the bad cholesterol. Okay, I like ApoB a little bit better. ApoB is a different cholesterol marker that I like to follow more. Let's talk about LDL because most people are aware of that. If people have 2 copies of the ApoE4 variant, what's a normal LDL? I mean, I definitely want it less than 100, probably want it less than 70. People have 1 copy of ApoE4, well, I still want it less than 100, but maybe 70 is okay, and maybe it doesn't need to be less than 70. And maybe if 2 E4s, maybe you've got to be between 55 and 75. I'm making things up, but it also depends on other risk factors. High blood pressure, diabetes, and an LDL of 110 with an E44, that's an emergency. We got to get that LDL down through the right way, and that's a different discussion. There's different ways to lower cholesterol from a precision medicine perspective that will hopefully be educating folks on a lot more coming soon. I would say in the coming months on Retain Your Brain, we'll be kind of pushing forward with some ways to kind of give a little bit of a better guide on precision-based cholesterol management, especially in people with E4s. But, the take-home point here is there's no like perfect one reference range with a static gene without other input. Women versus men, perimenopausal women versus postmenopausal versus premenopause, men that have multiple vascular risk factors versus men that have none. An individual person's optimal reference range, because the normal reference range that people use are like averages that just kind of like are so imprecise and like really unhelpful. Giving a person a precise reference range for any individual biomarker really depends on so many factors. But the more E4s, one or two versus one, certainly you want to optimize your blood sugar more, your blood pressure more potentially, less alcohol, all the same things.
Here's a step backward question on cholesterol. Someone said that they understand that the liver produces cholesterol, but that some people absorb a lot of the cholesterol from food. How can
Yes.
I determine if I'm one of those super absorbers and what should I do about it? Is cholesterol good or bad for the brain?
Great. So, okay, I'm going to answer this question perhaps maybe a little bit differently than others. And, is cholesterol good or bad for the brain? Like everyone needs some degree of cholesterol for the brain for it to function well and be healthy. I think there's a lot of confusion about brain cholesterol versus body cholesterol. And I also think that, it, you know, when people try to oversimplify anything, we're gonna miss stuff, right? High cholesterol must treat, right? Well, no, not necessarily. Does someone have a family history of early cardiac death? Oh, must treat. Does someone have high cholesterol, but also on a scan of their heart called a coronary calcium score? Like if you're above the age of, I don't know, 55, 60, 75, whatever age you want to choose, at a certain point, if you get a calcium score invented by Dr. Arthur Agatston, one of my mentors, CT calcium score, and it's high, and you have high cholesterol, oh, you got to treat your cholesterol. Like, no discussion there. But what if you have borderline cholesterol? No one in your family has ever had a heart attack, and your heart vessels are clean. No calcium, no plaques. Well, then maybe you don't have to treat. So I think a lot of people want binary yes, no. What's the recipe? What's the algorithm? And as Fred Plum, who's kind of a great mind in the field of neurology, who wrote the book on coma and consciousness for anyone interested in a neurology trivia, when I pressed him about questions in this area, he stopped me in the halls of Cornell when I was a medical student, and he said, visiting medical student, he said, medicine is not an algorithm. Treat each person as an individual. Those are some wise words right there. That was before precision medicine, and look what's happened. So I guess the way that I will answer the question is, cholesterol is a complicated topic. Now, different people can have high cholesterol for different reasons, and that's really the crux of what you're asking. Some people can overproduce cholesterol. Other people can overabsorb cholesterol. Other people may have genetics that cause a different pathway. So in our practice, we do a set of tests. Again, these are precision medicine based tests. Actually, not that expensive. They're just not routinely available. Again, stay tuned. Retain your brain. It will one day, I hope, if we get our funding that we need, hopefully be able to offer some of these tests, and some of this is through research and some whatever, but hopefully we'll be able to offer these within the coming months if everything goes well, to be able to understand, is a person an overabsorber or an overproducer of cholesterol? Meaning, if they're over absorbing cholesterol, then a statin drug, which helps with overproduction, isn't the right biological target unless that person is really high risk and may need multiple targets. If a person is an overproducer of cholesterol, but not an overabsorber, then a statin drug, again, starting at a low dose and increasing slowly over time, it's a bit modified risk versus benefits, don't want to cause side effects. If it's unnecessary, then we can use a targeted drug to reduce overproduction of cholesterol using a statin drug, for example. Over overabsorption in the gut there's a different drug, a plant sterol inhibitor called ezetimibe, and we've shown some really interesting data with ezetimibe in our brain health cohort. There's also a different drug, which some people think is new, but it's been around for a long, long time, called PCSK9 inhibitors. PCSK9 inhibitors are injectable. Honestly, these drugs are, again, nothing to disclose. They'll be generic one day. They're great. To inject, it's an injection every other week, so it's kind of a pain there. Work on a different mechanism, not a statin, not a pill. Really, really, really great drugs, and they bypass, meaning they don't go through the blood-brain barrier. So if there's someone out there that says, "Oh, I don't want to take a cholesterol drug because there's a 5% chance I'm going to get brain fog, or there's a 3% chance I'm going to get a weird side effect, or there's an 8% chance I'm going to get muscle cramping." Okay, I mean, I get it. I get it. I get it. Drugs have problems. Like if you don't need the drug, don't take it. But PCSK9 drugs kind of are like that happy medium. The problem is they're expensive right now. They're injectable. It's a whole different discussion. But one of these days, PCSK9s are, I think, in a decade from now, are going to be the most commonly used cholesterol drugs. I may be wrong. I'm guessing there because statins are like, so prevalent. But I think PCSK9 injections are really great. They're really safe on the brain. Oh boy, what is the generic name? The brand name is Repatha, and I'm forgetting the generic name, Afulamab or something like that. That is a drug that is a PCSK9 inhibitor that has multi-year data to show that you can take it and it has no negative cognitive effects at all. Ezetimibe, the plant sterol thing, again, no negative cognitive anything that I've ever seen. Bempedoic acid, a new non-statin drug. I like statins in the right people, but I think our society is, I hate to say this because I'm like not anti-statin, I'm not pro-statin, I'm just pro-evidence and I'm pro-precision medicine. But I think people a lot of times are put on really high doses of statins, and like 20 milligrams of rosuvastatin or Crestor barely lowers cholesterol more than 5 or 10 milligrams. And like it can cause other side effects and maybe not maybe the perfect drug for certain people at Alzheimer's risk. And I want to be cautious about saying that. This is being recorded, but I'm still going to be cautious about saying it. You know, take home point here is that we're just really at the first cusp of our understanding of how to best treat cholesterol for Alzheimer's risk reduction and prevention. And within a few months, I hope we'll have a little bit of a better roadmap. So stay tuned on Retain Your Brain.
Is social isolation as bad as smoking for the brain?
Mm, wow. Um, so pre-COVID, I may have answered this question differently, but post-COVID, I would say. So pre-COVID, I would say smoking's worse. Of course, kidding me? Smoking's bad, terrible. Especially E44 is terrible. Tobacco smoking is bad. Now then, there's vaping, and that's confusing. And there's different this and nicotine. Could that be protective and parking? Like, there's a lot of confusing stuff with smoking. Smoking tobacco, cigarettes specifically, absolutely leads to bad cardiovascular, brain, and lung outcomes, like clear as day. If you smoke, try to smoke less. Try to quit smoking tobacco. Just not a great thing for health. Blood clots. I mean, lots of stuff can happen with smoking. Um, I think the challenge is that social isolation can be incredibly traumatic on the brain. My mom was in a assisted living during COVID, and this was in the state of Florida, and she was on lockdown. We couldn't go in. Like we would say hi. Like I was in New York at the time. We took our first COVID flight. Like she hadn't seen anyone. We went to the glass, and like like 9 months, 8 months of that, 8 months on lockdown, no one allowed in, and there are some nursing homes out there, and it's like forget it. And you can't go in or out. Like you go out, you stay out, right? That COVID effect on my mom's brain, like not Alzheimer's, but she had maybe some vascular stuff, worse than smoking. 8 months of that versus 10 years of smoking, I'll take 10 years of smoking any day. I'd take 20 years of smoking over 8 months of that. So it's a tough question to answer because I don't have objective data. We've never did a study this, but yeah, I think the brain needs stimulation, the brain needs socialization, the brain needs communication, the brain needs visual, audio, like interaction, touch, like yeah, Alzheimer's in the brain. It's multimodal.
Is there anything new that we know about sleep and Alzheimer's, and specifically how to get deep sleep?
So I think it's been becoming, more and more clear that sleep is um, easily one of the five most impactful, important, critical elements to get right on a healthy, on a brain healthy Alzheimer's prevention plan. When we sleep, we detoxify our brain. The glymphatic system is the trash disposal system. So we know about the blood system. Some of us know about the lymphatic system, which takes out the infections. And the glymphatic system is when the trash gets taken out, the amyloid gets dumped out, and kind of the recycling happens. So without adequate sleep, a person can be exercising all they want, loosening up the amyloid protein, the sticky plaques, but without sleep, you're burning the candle at both ends. How do we get more deep sleep? I'll give you a tip. This isn't going to be very scientific. Everyone wants the magic pill, right? What do I got? Oh, well, actually, one thing is don't drink coffee, don't drink caffeine before bed. That's one thing. Don't drink caffeinated beverages after like 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Why? The half-life, meaning half as much of the Coke of the caffeine that you have Coke, you have a coffee, you have whatever, half of that caffeine is still in the system 6 hours later. So you want to stop at noon, and then by 9 p.m., okay, 75% is gone. Um, there are things that you can do to promote deep sleep by just sensible health, sleep hygiene. By the way, someone had a question about cocovia. Does it have a little caffeine in it? It does. So want to have caffeine and coffee, earlier in the day. But you want to, most people do exercise in the morning. Some people do exercise at night. It doesn't mess up their sleep-wake cycles, but other people it does. Um, a lot of people have like a bedroom that is either too warm, uncomfortable, whatever. Like fixing that. Like some people sleep better with cooler temperatures. Figure it out. Some people have wearables. I have this Whoop device. I have a Garmin. I've tracked everything. Figure out what your sleep metrics look like, even though no device is perfect, with different temperatures, exercise or not at night. Like there is sleep hygiene things that can give you deeper sleep for sure. This light, like the phone, like there's so much light, like the brain isn't supposed to see light after sundown. It shuts down melatonin production and it really messes up sleep wake cycles. If you want more deep sleep, like turn the phones off, like dim the lights. Don't use your phone for 30 minutes before bed. Just don't do it. But the best way to get more deep sleep, ready for this? This is a big one. Get ready. Just get more total sleep. It's like that simple. Stay in bed longer. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier and try to stay in bed 15 minutes later. That extra 45 minutes, if you sleep 30 minutes of that, then an extra 10 of that may be deep sleep. And there's a big difference between an hour and 10 minutes, or an hour and 20 minutes of deep sleep every night. It's a big increment. And the goal is for people to have, in my opinion, a minimum of an hour and 15-ish minutes, hour and 20 minutes of deep sleep, hour and 10 or hour and 20 minutes of REM sleep, which is the dream state of sleep, which short-term memories go into long-term memories. Deep sleep is for detoxification. And I believe that people should have at least 3 hours combined of deep sleep and REM sleep. And if you get 8 hours of sleep, you're almost always going to get that. If you get 7 hours of sleep, you're almost always going to get a little less than that. So that's the balance there.
Someone wants to know how they can tell if they're in denial about their partner's memory problems. Some days are good and some days are not so good.
Oh boy. Well, this is an important question. I'll answer this in just 1 second. We got 5 minutes left, everybody. This time flew. This is the fastest these Q&As I think have gone. But I'm just going to put in the chat another a link to a survey. So in 5 minutes from now, before y'all sign off, just please take 2 to 3 minutes of your time, complete our survey. If you have suggestions about what Retain Your Brain software, retainyourbrain.com can do better for you. If you liked or didn't like the live Q&A, if you have suggestions, please take a short survey. Tell me what you think. So to answer now the question, could a person be in denial when they have cognitive loss, and what is there to do? Well, I think what most people don't realize is if a person is in denial about themselves having a cognitive problem, the first thing I want to say is it's not their fault. Okay. And what do I mean by that? Denial of illness. The fancy neurology term is called agnosia, I think is what it's called. Denial of illness is a symptom of neurodegenerative disease. Okay. Um, I have an old friend who has dementia. He's an amazing guy. And he has no idea anything's wrong with him. People are sad because they see him and oh, feel bad. Oh, my friend, whatever, and his wife, we're okay. We're okay because he's okay. And he has no idea he has dementia. This guy, amazing guy, one of my favorite people on the planet, no idea at all. So whether you're in your initial symptoms, where you're missing words, misplacing items, forgetting dates, forgetting things, they may themselves think it's normal aging and may not be worried about it. They may themselves know that it's happening, but they may be too anxious to face it. But then there's a third construct where it may be happening, but they don't understand. And their frontal lobes or whatever part of the brain is responsible for kind of understanding whether or not that behavior is right or wrong or change, it's not their fault. So I think what I would say is if you have a loved one or a friend or a family member or whoever, and someone's resistant to talk to a doctor, I get it. A lot happens all the time. Be patient, but really try. Um, Talk to the doctor. Go to the appointments with them. If they don't go to the appointments, that's hard. Maybe make a telemedicine visit. House calls don't happen. My great uncle Ruby used to make house calls as a family medicine doctor on Long Island. Like that stuff doesn't happen as much anymore. But try to get basic blood tests. There are simple things like thyroid deficiencies and vitamin deficiencies. Like there are some things that are more easily correctable. It may not be Alzheimer's. It may be a medical condition. But the best that I can do is just to get a team. You don't want to ambush someone, but get multiple people and try to encourage them to get medical care.
And if you're the family member who's wondering whether you yourself is in denial about the things you see in your loved one, what you're saying applies to that as well. It's about getting more information that can help reassure you or give you information on wherever this is going, what kind of help might be needed.
Yeah, and if I misinterpret the question, which I may
Oh,
have, because you
no.
already said it,
No,
but
I don't.
if a family member is concerned about someone, but may be in denial themselves, um, that's very. I mean, don't beat yourself up over about that. Like, I was in denial about a family member once, and like, wait a minute, that shouldn't happen. But when it's a family member, everything's different. There's like a bias. It's like a cognitive dissonance, right? Um, yes, you may be inherently in denial because of the pain, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the burden. Um, I get it. I have empathy for it. But the sooner that we can get over the hump, the sooner the person can be evaluated, the sooner a blood test can be done, a brain scan can be done, a doctor can be engaged, the sooner treatments can start. And we don't have like a magic bullet. We can't fully prevent or cure Alzheimer's, no way. But there's lots of stuff that we can do nowadays. So I would say get educated, get informed, take a deep breath, talk to someone about this, and then also seek the care of a medical professional.
There's a great last question that's kind of a follow-up to that,
Sure.
about prevention. Changing my habits seems to be a full-time job, leaving me very little time. Does this become easier?
Um, I'm gonna bring up my dinner last night because my old ApoE44 friend literally said the exact same thing. He's like, Doc, you're killing me. First it was the strength training and I hated it, and then now you're making me run and oh man, I had a told me to take up a new hobby, so I'm playing pickleball, and okay, that's fun because I have friends and I'm socializing. And okay, Doc, is this all worth it? Is this really necessary? And what I told him was, well, the proof is in the pudding. Let me pull up your data. So I pulled up his data, and this guy's in his 50s. He's got everything to live for. His kids just graduated from high school. He's empty nester. He's not ready to retire yet. He's still going. But he's spending hours and hours a week doing this stuff. He hates the zone two, but he's doing. He's worth the way to. Okay, he's doing he's eating the right stuff. He's like he skips dessert, right? Like even last night, skip dessert. Is it all worth it? And what I said is, let me show you. And he's in our research study, so we've tracked his blood biomarkers for almost 5 years, detailed blood biomarkers, hundreds of markers. We've tracked his cognitive function. We've tracked his body fat, his muscle mass, whatever. And I can tell you that yesterday I told him for the first time that everything about his everything not only had improved, but for the first time after 4 years, because he really turned up the screws the last 4 to 6 months, everything about his everything not only improved, but for the first time ever, normalized. His ApoB cholesterol, which some people want less than 55, was 40. His LDL was in the 50s. That's pretty good. His hemoglobin A1C, this is average blood sugar over the previous 3 months. 6.5 is diabetes, 5.7 is pre-diabetes. He was 5.6 when he came in. It's 4.9, no drugs, 4.9. His amyloid level was high, straight up. And I told him this years ago. And I said, you have 2 copies of ApoE44. Maybe that's just normal. No one knows. No one's done these blood tests and ApoE44s. Who knows? You're young. It's totally stone cold normal. I basically said, you're now a 35-year-old amyloid level of ApoE44. No symptoms, but his amyloid went from uh-oh to perfect, literally optimal. Okay. Looks like he doesn't have an ApoE4 on his amyloid. His p-tau 217, p-tau 181, GFAP, NFL, every single one of his markers went from either normal to optimal or to normal. Every single one. I showed it to him. I also showed him the engine light, the ApoE engine light analogy. This is the guy I talked about earlier. It was 1.65 or 1.68. I think it's 1.68. And now he's down to 1.5. He literally went from the 65th, 70 something percentile to the 25th percentile. His ApoE4 gene is not having to work as hard. The ApoE4 protein is not getting, produced. And you bring that down, the amyloid calms down, the tau calms down, everything calms down, and I believe biologically he's aging at a much slower rate. His body fat was 26.6% when he first came in. It's now 17.3. Pretty good. Muscle mass, dry lean mass percentage, he was about 20.1% dry lean mass. These are numbers that are a little complicated, but now he's 21.6, which is basically optimal. Every year you're supposed to lose muscle mass. 1%, he's 3 pounds. He has 3 pounds more muscle now than when he started. So I think the take home point here is it all worth it? Now he thinks it's worth it, but he complained to me yesterday. But once you see the data, he's appreciative. The other thing that I want to mention is he has very detailed cognitive testing, and he's never been abnormal. He's never had, he said, oh, it takes longer for him to remember something, and okay, maybe, things are a little slower, and maybe this and maybe that. But he went from the 50th percentile, maybe 60th percentile, to the 78th to 93rd percentile on basically every single one of his tests. So even though he didn't have symptoms, he went from normal to optimal on cognitive function, and he went from borderline to normal to optimal on his biological markers. And if Alzheimer's disease is a clinical biological construct, he knocked them both off the list. So take home point is yes, sorry, it's worth it. Keep it going.
Persistence pays off.
You got it. Well, Paula, that was fun. Thanks so much. And if you're still on, almost everyone's still on. The last one, 2 people hopped off in the hour. We're about 14 people have hopped off this time. So we've kept people attention, but 14 people have hopped off. But if you're still on, please just do that quick survey. It's in the chat. Thanks so much, everybody. This was fun, and we'll keep doing this. And we're going to pre-schedule for March, April, and May. So stay tuned. We'll get all those on the calendar soon. Thanks so
Okay.
much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Doc.